Hello, this is Patrick from OneCNC West, and in this video we're going to take a look at Machining Project 1. Now that was the first blueprint that we created. Let's head up here to File, and we're going to say Open, and all you do is you just highlight the file that you might want to load, and then you look over here on the right and there's a nice beautiful preview, and just double click the item that you want to load and OneCNC will load that up. Another way to do that would be to come up here to the Open button. This does exactly the same way. You just find the folder you want to, where your files are stored, and just highlight the part that you want, double click that, and it will load the part in. You could also use the Recent tab over here on the right. This will give you a thumbnail of every single file, not every one, but the most recent files that you've saved within OneCNC. And if you want to load that, just simply double click on the little thumbnail there, and it will load the part up for you. Okay, now for our example, we're going to just open up our first blueprint here. And if you remember, we have our blueprint on a separate layer, so I want to hide that layer. So we're going to open our layer browser, and where it says Print Box, I'm just going to left click on that little eye. It shuts the eyeball down, and you can see now we've got our part file without the blueprint. Alright, now to machine this, today we are going to profile this, and we're also going to drill the hole. Now to do that, this all takes place within the NC Manager. Every time you apply toolpath, it gets stored here within the NC Manager as an operation. They're called operations. Alright, now your operations are going to be found inside this stock toolpath button. It's the second button from the left. So I'm going to left click that. And here's our stock toolpath dialog box. And there's several things that we can do here. We can profile, we can chamfer, pocket. Notice too that as I left click on these different options, OneCNC gives us a nice little display over on the right just to show us exactly what we can do. Well, we want a profile, so I'm going to select Profile Chain and then select OK. Now OneCNC wants us to select the geometry that we'd like to profile. We could profile the circle, or we can profile this outside shape. Well, I want to profile this outside shape, and I want to start right about here. Notice that my cursor says Start. I'm going to left click, and as soon as I do that, we get the arrows. Now the arrows help us determine the climb cut or conventional cut, and also the side of the geometry we want to cut on. I want a climb cut on the outside, so I'm going to left click that arrow. Now my cursor says End, and the reason why it does that is because OneCNC already knows where we're going to begin the toolpath. See how this line's already highlighted? It already knows the direction is clockwise. Now it wants to know the very end. Okay? So if I were to take my cursor and left click right here, you can see all this geometry is selected, and what's going to happen now is OneCNC would profile from here all the way to the end there. Okay? Now what if we want to program the entire part? We want to profile the whole thing. Here's how we can do that. I just hit the Escape key on the keyboard, and this time we're going to start the same way. I'm going to left click. I'm going to select this arrow on the outside, so we're going to climb cut. Now my cursor says End. Now if I left click right here, that will select all the geometry. Okay, it's gone all the way around. Let me show you one other technique. Going to do that one more time. I'm going to left click, I'm going to select my climb cut, and this time instead of taking my cursor and selecting here, I'm just going to hit the F3 key on the keyboard, function key 3, and that selects the rest of the geometry. If I wanted to, I could continue to select other shapes, but I'm finished, so I'm going to hit the right mouse button. As soon as I do that, we get our first dialog box. Now this is where we determine the size and type of tool that we want to use. So for tool type, you can come over here and select whatever type of tool you want to use, and then you simply put in whatever diameter you want. If you want to select from a tool library, just left click on the tool. I'm going to take my cursor, see how the tool highlights there. I'm just going to left click on that, and here's our tool library. Now you can easily add more tools to this. You can edit these tools, you can delete tools, but for this example I just want to show you that you can come up here, select the tool type. I'm going to select end mill, and then I want to select a 3/4 inch high-speed end mill, so I'm going to left click that. As soon as that's highlighted, I'll click Accept. OneCNC fills out these parameters for us. The station number is the turret position, and for this exercise I'm going to say this tool is going to be in turret position number 1. Okay? Now as far as spindle speed and feed rates, you can fill these in manually. Note too that there's two feed rates. There's a feed rate for X and Y, that's this yellow feed rate, and then you've got a feed rate here for your Z feed rate, and they call that the plunge feed rate. You can type in whatever values you want, or you can have OneCNC calculate these for you. Let me show you how to do that. Just come down here to where it says stock and left click. And this is your material library. Again, you can easily add different materials. You can edit these. You can delete these if you want to. And there's lots of different materials here. But for example, if I was cutting, I don't know, I'll pick some type of steel down here. And I'll click accept. You can see now that the speeds and feeds have changed for that type of material and that diameter. Okay, I'm going to change this one more time. I'm going to come up here and select aluminum billet and click accept. And you can see now that the speeds and feeds have changed for that type of material. Let's click next. These are your clearance values. Now the red, whenever you see something in red, you want to always keep an eye on that. That's something that you've got to be very cautious about. And you can see that the rapid Z plane, this is a clearance plane. This is the Z level that the tool is going to move from one part to another, or as it moves from point A to point B. You want to make sure that this rapid Z plane is higher than any cap screw, any vice jaw, any clamp. It's got to be your safety plane. I've got 1 inch in there. The plunge clearance, that's where the tool is going to start to feed down. Okay, so we're going to rapid. This red area is a rapid move, and then where it's green, we're going to start feeding down. So your plunge clearance, that's where the feed's going to start. And I've got 100 thousandths. The top of the material is 0. So we've got Z0 as the top of the part. And then how deep do we want to machine? Well, for this example, I'm just going to machine minus 250 thousandths. So we'll click next. Don't worry about step over yet. We'll talk more about this later on when we get into pocketing. We're just going to take one pass, so don't worry about step over. It's not even going to play here. I don't want to take any rough depths. I'm just going to take this in one pass. But if this were a deep part, I might want to take different rough depths, and that's what these little steps are right here. But we don't need that for right now. I'm not going to leave any material on the side. I'm just going to say 0. Let's click next here. And for finishing, this is just an extra finish pass, and we don't need an extra finish pass, so I'm going to leave that set to none and click next. This is how we approach and exit the part, okay? And you can see here that you've got a lead-in style and a lead-out style. In other words, how do we want to enter the profile? How do we want to exit the profile? For lead-in and lead-out styles, you have line, you also have line-line, and you also have line arc. I'm going to use the line arc command. And I want to make my lead-in radius a little bigger. I'm going to make that 200 thousandths. And for my lead-in angle, in other words, I want my arc only to be a 60-degree arc. Here's a 90-degree arc right here. But I only want 60 degrees worth of an arc. And this little tiny line, I don't want a line. I just want an arc move. All right. If I wanted a line, I could type in a line value of 100 thousandths. So we'd get a linear move of 100 thousandths, and then we'd get the arc. But I don't want any linear move at all when we're approaching. So I'm going to leave that set to 0. Now I want my exit parameters to be exactly the same as my entry values. So I could retype these if we wanted to, or I can simply click these little arrow button, or this arrow button, and it will populate the bottom with all the information that's on top there. Let's go ahead and click finish. All right, and there's our toolpath. You can see the green, and you can see the lead in and the lead out. Now, when you rotate your part, you'll notice that the toolpath will hide, and that's on purpose because other CAM systems, when you start applying lots of toolpath, you get tons and tons of lines and arcs, and it begins to become very confusing. That's not going to be the case with OneCNC. It's a very simple environment, so if I rotate or move the part, the toolpath is temporarily hidden. If I want to see it again, I can just left click on that, and you can see there's our toolpath again. Okay? Now if you want to simulate the tool, if you want to see the tool move around, you can right click. There's two ways to do this. Let's take a look at Preview Toolpath first. Preview Toolpath will just simply take the tool and drive it in the direction that you want to go. And you can certainly see there's our 60-degree arc on, climb cutting and arcing off. Okay? That's called Preview Toolpath. All I did was I right click, Preview Toolpath. You can control the speed in that.